Okay, I think that we are set and ready to roll. Let me look at the chat here. Give everybody some time to filter into the show. We're waiting for everything to roll in. Looks like we're set to go here. Good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okie dokie. Well, it's Tuesday evening. Time to talk about some politics. Here in the Beehive State in Utah, my name is Brian Schott. I am the publisher and managing editor of Utah Political Watch, which you can find online at utahpolitics.news. And I'm very excited to be talking to all of you this evening. I have to apologize. Last week, we were set to have a live on a week ago tonight, and then all hell broke loose. Last week was a week. I was supposed to be doing the live, but my wife texted me and said she needed to head up to the emergency room. She recently had some surgery, and there were some complications, so we had to run up to the emergency room, and then the doctor said that they needed to go back in for the surgery to clean some stuff up, so they kept her overnight, and then she stayed an extra night in the hospital, and then she came home on Thursday, and then my family came into town because my daughter got married over the weekend. So it was a week, and I was distracted, and and I apologize for abruptly canceling last week's live. But I think it's understandable given the circumstances. So anyway, good to have you on board. Good to talk to all of you this evening. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if there's anything you want to talk about, you can leave it in the chat. We are live tonight on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. So just leave your comment in the chat and I will get to it post haste. As we get ready to start this, Nathan Detroit on Twitch, one of our subscribers at utahpolitics.news, asks if I'm an Avs fan. I've got an interesting history with the Colorado Avalanche. I was in Denver when they moved there from Quebec, and I was working for the news radio station in Denver, and their playoff run in which they won their very first Stanley Cup, I was a reporter there. I produced some talk shows, and I got to cover the team on some of their games and some of the press conferences. I do remember one of the best things I ever saw in my life. They were playing the Chicago Blackhawks, I believe, in the playoffs, and that was a hell of a series. I think 3 of the matches went into overtime. Maybe a couple of them went into double overtime. Very, very long games, just brutally tiring matches in that playoff series against the Blackhawks. And they had a player named Chris Chelios on their team. And he was yapping. He was chirping the entire series at Patrick Waugh, the goalkeeper for the Avalanche, who they had acquired in a trade with the Montreal Canadiens. And they were going back and forth, and I can't remember exactly what Chelios had said the night before or the day before in one of his press conferences, but I got assigned to go cover the Avalanche press conference where they brought the players out for their availability. And Waugh was scheduled to speak, and immediately the first question to Waugh was about what Chris Chelios had said about him, and Patrick Waugh had the greatest line that I have ever heard in a press conference, where he just looked at the reporter and said, "I can't hear him. I've got 2 Stanley Cup rings plugging my ears." And that was pretty much the end of that controversy. There was no more about that. That shut up Chris Chelios, and we were done. Because how do you come back from that? And you have to remain professional in those circumstances. And I was a news guy. I was not a sports guy, so I was sort of interloping on that. But it was the Stanley Cup run, and everybody in Denver, all the media outlets in Denver had multiple reporters, and I just had to be there that day. But it was all I could do to not go, damn. I think I said it under my breath, but I don't think anybody heard me. Now, that does not answer your question. Am I an Avalanche fan? Kinda. Nah. Hockey's okay. I enjoy watching it. I don't really follow any team. I haven't been to a Mammoth game. I don't know when I'll get to a Mammoth game. That's not where I want to spend my sports dollars. The matches that I go to, I prefer soccer. And my sports dollars have been going to support the Utah Royals, who are playing great. I know I've complained about them incessantly since they came back, but they are playing really good soccer right now. Really good football. They're at the top of the table, which is surprising. I'm going to be heading out to catch more of their matches, and it's a damn bargain to go to the Royals match too. And this is my standing invitation to Speaker Mike Schultz and all of those Utah Republicans who want to protect women's sports. Come with me to a Utah Royals game, because I don't see you at these women's sports matches. You want to protect women's sports, but I don't see you at the Utah Royals. I don't see you there. Come with me. I will buy your ticket. I know you have to report it as a gift, but I will buy your ticket. Well, it's a reporting thing. So any Utah Republican who wants to go, who is all about the sanctity of women's sports, hit me up. I will take you to a Royals match. I'll even pay for parking. We'll get good seats. I'll pay for parking, and we'll have a good time. And if you don't understand the game, I will explain it to you, because up until COVID hit, I was a referee, not a high-level referee, but I refereed. That's what I did on the weekends. I did probably 6 or 7 soccer matches, youth soccer, adult amateur soccer, every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, until COVID hit, and then I just kind of fell away from it. Kind of miss it sometimes, but not really. I've got other stuff to do. But yes, that's my standing invitation. If you are a Republican lawmaker, Republican policymaker who can't stop chirping about protecting women's sports, put my money where your mouth is. Okay? I'll buy the ticket to the Royals match. We'll get great seats, like I said. I'll even buy you a hot dog. Come with me and support women's soccer, because the Royals are playing great. They really are. And I did not expect this. So, anyway. Okay, so that's the start. It's the start of tonight's show. Thanks, everybody, for joining. My name is Brian Schott. If you're just joining late, I am the publisher and managing editor of Utah Political Watch. You'll find us online at utahpolitics.news. That is reader-supported independent journalism. That I am the person who runs the site. I write for it. I produce all the video. I produce the podcast. I just released an interview I did with Liban Mohammed, who is a Democrat running for the 1st Congressional District. I've recorded interviews with 3 of the 4 Democrats who are running in the 1st Congressional District and will be on the ballot for the June primary, and I'll record the 4th tomorrow. Those will be coming out this week as podcast video, audio. You can consume them wherever you want. And I'm the only person who does that. I edit all the video, I edit the audio, I produce all that stuff. All the articles you see, that's me. Social media, I do the whole thing. There's no corporate backing for this website. There's no billionaire backing for this website. It is reader supported. Journalists owned, journalists operated, reader supported. And if you want to support what I do, go over to my website. It's utahpolitics.news. You can sign up for my newsletter. That's free. But if you want to support what I do and enable me to continue doing the kind of reporting that I'm doing, become a paying subscriber, $55 a year, or you can throw some money in the tip jar. It all helps. All of it helps. All of it helps me to continue doing what I'm doing. So, Nathan Detroit says, start by teaching them the offside rule. Yeah, you and every parent who's ever been on the sideline of a soccer match that I've refereed. And now they're going to change it, and they're going to make it stupid where with the daylight rule. I don't want to get into the IFAB rules. I don't want to do that. Maybe on a future podcast, but I agree with you 100%. And we've got the World Cup coming up. I really fear that the World Cup's going to suck because we're just not promoting it correctly, and I don't think anybody's going to go. I think the competition is going to be fantastic. Don't know how well the United States is going to do, but they didn't really get things together in their pre-World Cup matches. But I'll still be watching. I don't really have a favorite. I just like, it's going to be hard to rival just how good the 2022 World Cup in Qatar was. That was a tremendous tournament. That was one of the best tournaments I've ever seen. So, all right, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, especially since I wasn't here last week. But there's a lot on the agenda. First thing I want to start talking about is it's debate season. Tomorrow night is debate night in Utah. The 4 Democrats for the 1st Congressional District are going to be on the stage, on your TV, debating with the Utah Debate Commission, the new home of the Utah Debate Commission. Utah Debate Commission under new management. If you remember a couple of years ago, the Utah legislature, they were providing some money to the debate commission to help them put on these televised debates. And they just decided, let's just cut out the middleman. So now it's hosted at the University of Utah. It was supposed to be hosted at Utah Valley University. They were supposed to be in charge of it, but the University of Utah decided to push their way in, and now they're in charge of it completely through the Hinckley Institute. I don't know what's going on. But I can tell you this, even though it's under new management, that debate's still going to suck. I'm absolutely convinced it's going to suck because they haven't changed anything. It's the same format as before. And the format before sucked. And now it's going to be terrible again. Why? Because they're doing the same damn thing. Same question to all 4 candidates. Everybody gets a minute to answer. And then if there are rebuttals, you get 30 seconds. And if there's a follow-up question, you get 30 seconds. You're not going to get a lot out of this. You're not going to get much out of the debate anyway, at all. At least they're not having lobbyists be the moderators. Tomorrow night, the moderator is Max Roth from Fox 13. Glenn Mills, former reporter, is going to be the moderator for the second debate, which takes place on Wednesday. That's the Congressional District 1 debate between, the Friday debate is Glenn Mills. That's Congressional District 3 debate, which is between Phil Lyman and Celeste Malloy. And then next week we have the Congressional District 2 debate, and that's going to be moderated by Natalie Gochner. And that one is going to feature Blake Moore and Carrie Ann Lisenby. But at least it's not lobbyists moderating the debate, but it's still going to suck. Because they're still doing this. They're still doing the thing where they're going to have students ask questions. And I get why they do that, but whenever they do that, the whole thing comes to a screeching halt. And you've got an hour on stage, so everybody, all 4 of the, I haven't done the math on this yet, but how much is anybody going to get to talk? How much is anybody going to get to talk when you have 4 candidates on stage tomorrow night? And I'll be there. I'm going to be there in the audience because apparently they think I'm a real journalist, but the legislature doesn't. And by the way, we still haven't heard the latest on my lawsuit. We're still waiting for a decision from the 10th Circuit, and that could come any day. And as soon as I know, you'll know. But I don't expect there to be much that comes out of tomorrow night's debate. You're not going to learn a lot from it. It could be entertaining in the fact that the three progressive candidates, Nate Bluin, Liban Mohammed, and Michael Farrell, they are all, I expect all of them to just tee off on Ben McAdams. They have to attack him. But the other thing they have to do is it's going to be their one and only chance to go after McAdams when he's on the same stage with them in front of a televised audience. I know they've done other forums and debates, but this is going to be the one that's on TV. This is the debate that counts. And so expect the three progressive candidates to go after McAdams, which makes sense because whatever you say, he is the front runner in this race. He's got the most money. He's got the best name ID. He's the front runner. And so this is their chance to really go after him. But at the same time, they have to stand out from each other. So you've got two simultaneous competitions going on at once. You've got all three of those progressive candidates attacking Ben McAdams and making the case that they are the better alternative to McAdams, but they also have to beat each other for the progressive lane right now. I expect them to paint McAdams as a Republican light Democrat, which is what they've been doing. They'll say he can't be trusted to fight Trump or defend progressive priorities. They'll hit his voting record in Congress. He represented a Republican district when he was in Congress last time and had to be looking over his shoulder at those constituents. So they're going to go after his voting record. And that message, he voted with Republicans, is going to be a potent one. On the other side, McAdams, I expect him to talk about how to make the case about electability. He won, when he first won in 2018, he flipped the most Republican seat that flipped in that race. That was a very Republican seat, and the wave election carried him to victory. Expect them to attack his corporate donors, but at the same time, they have to stand out from each other. None of them, they can't let any of the others stand out as the clear McAdams alternative. So I think that's where the tension is going to be tomorrow night, but it's not going to be it's not going to be completely realized because of the restrictive format of this debate, which again, I really don't think serves anybody. And then there's a question of who's going to watch it. I mean, I expect this one to get some very, very, some comparatively high numbers compared to what we've seen in the past. But again, we've got this really restrictive format. How many questions are they actually going to get to? And I'm sure they'll do another one where they'll bring another reporter in to ask a question, which is what they've done in the past. The problem with that is you have to ask a generic question that pertains to all the candidates. Why not allow the moderator to ask a pointed question to a single candidate and then let everybody else chime in on that? It doesn't have to be an attack question. Just point out something about their policy. Let them answer and then give the other candidates a chance to chime in on that. I think that would be much more useful rather than give me your thoughts on the data center, for instance. I'm just spitballing here. Give me your, do you think the data centers should be banned? Do you think there should be a moratorium on them? You've got 1 minute. And candidates, if they get a question that makes them uncomfortable, they should be able to filibuster for a minute. It's only a minute. So again, I don't have a lot of high hopes for tomorrow night's debate. But at the end of the day, the biggest problem for the three progressives running against McAdams, it's each other. If Nate Bluin, Liban Mohammed, and Mike Farrell spend significant time trying to draw a contrast among themselves, then McAdams wins that debate just by being steady. So that's what I think that you should watch tomorrow night. I'd like to know your thoughts on what you're expecting for the debate. Am I wrong? Like your thoughts. I've made it pretty clear that I don't find the debates put on by the Utah Debate Commission to be useful, and I've been a critic of them since they first announced this. Because what they did when they first announced it is they institutionalized the fact that there would be one major debate among the candidates. It's that televised debate. And not even then, because if you remember, Burgess Owens threw a tantrum because he was mad at the Salt Lake Tribune. And I believe the Salt Lake Tribune executive editor was scheduled to be the moderator of debate, and he said he wasn't going to show up. So they've normalized, what this has done is it normalized that there will be one televised debate. And I would like more of them, but if you're an incumbent or a front runner, you want less because you're exposed less. Elliot Nutter says, I was watching a Roku show this weekend and Celeste Malloy ads were all over the place. I didn't even know Roku did state political ads on their platform. Color me surprised. You can micro-target that stuff. You really can. I've been approached by, I've gotten emails. I'll put it this way. I've gotten emails. Everyone has been, I've gotten emails from platforms allowing me or offering to let me buy advertising. I'm not going to buy advertising on Roku, but it's micro targeting. They know where you're watching from. You get a lot of bang for your buck for that. And so that doesn't surprise me at all. Nathan Detroit says, I don't think debates are useful in general. As you said, they can filibuster for the short time they're given and never answer a question. The best debate performance I've seen from a moderator from the Utah Debate Commission was in 2024. Thomas Wright, former Utah Republican Party chair, was moderating, I believe, the U.S. Senate debate. And he was better than the journalists that they had moderating it. He asked follow-up questions, and not ones that he had anticipated. He listened to what the candidates were saying in their answers and then decided to follow up on that. And I was absolutely shocked, but I thought his performance in 2024, and I want to say he did the U.S. Senate, but he might have done another race. But I was really pleasantly surprised with his performance. I thought it was quite good. He did a good job. It looks like, well, sure. It looks like I might have frozen. I've been having some problems with my internet today. Looks like I might have frozen. I know I've frozen on TikTok. Let me know, because I'll drop off and reconnect. I don't know why it's frozen. Everything should be working just fine. Yeah, hang on a second. I'll just fix it here. I think it's my studio. Let me look over here. Yeah, that's what I needed to do. Just need to restart the camera. Okay. And that is done. The video froze. I just had to restart the camera. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to have to investigate that. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the debates. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about that. We did have some news in the 1st Congressional District today. Nate Bluin sent out a press release, got some got some got some earned media about it, where he said that he was going to be commissioning a poll to see who the leading progressive candidate is. He wants to consolidate the progressive support against Ben McAdams. And he said if he is not the leading candidate in this poll, he will drop out of the race. I interviewed him today about that. It'd be on the podcast that I release maybe tomorrow or the day after. But I did ask him about this. And this was my question, because I'm very cynical about this sort of thing. Nate Bluin is paying for the poll, and if he's not the leading candidate, then that is a major self-own. He's a sitting state senator. He's got built-in a name ID advantage over Liban Mohammed and Michael Farrell. Of course he's going to be the leading progressive candidate. And I asked him about this, and I'll have to share the answer when I publish the podcast, but I asked him about this, and I said, why is your poll, why can we trust the poll that you commission to be the gauge, the definitive gauge for progressive support in this race, when polls are based mostly on name ID? What it is, and I told him this, it felt to me like this is a lever to try and force some of his critics out of the race, to force his opponents out of the race. That's what this is. That's how you should look at this. Because he's not going to commission a poll. I mean, let's be frank. He's not going to commission a poll where he's going to come in second. And if he does come in second and then has to drop out of the race, well, then we've got a story, folks. But I did ask him. I said, if you're so concerned about consolidating the progressive vote in order to give someone a better chance of beating Ben McAdams in this race, why didn't you drop out of the race and support Liban Mohammed when he won the vote at the convention? Because you have the convention vote was a demonstration of support for a progressive candidate. Liban Mohammed won that vote. He got 51% in the final round. Nate Bluin finished third. I think that's a legitimate question. And he, I'm not going to spoil what the answer was, but that's how you should look at this. This is a stunt. This was a stunt. And if you don't see it as a stunt, I'm telling you it's a stunt. I'm trying to be kind about it, but this is a stunt. This is a stunt to gain some media attention, which he did. Good for him. That was his entire goal. It was a stunt. So that's how you should probably think about that. I want to hear what you have to say. Leave your questions and your comments in the chat. A lot of stuff going on, and ballots go out next week. So tomorrow night in the debate, that is going to be the last chance for a lot of these candidates to make their selling point to voters. Now, one thing that I have been surprised by is fewer people than I thought have reached out to the Salt Lake County clerk asking for a Democratic ballot in this race. There's not a lot of Republicans, not a lot of registered Republicans, not a lot of independents who have decided to jump into this race, who have decided to request a ballot and vote in this race, because the Democrats do have the Democrats do have an open primary, meaning anybody can vote in it, just as long as they don't cast a ballot in another primary. But you do have to request a ballot if you want to get it by mail. Now, there's a possibility that Republicans will show up in person to vote, but far fewer people have requested a ballot than I would have thought. Last check, it was under 1,000. So maybe that's not going to play as big of a factor in this race as I thought. So it's all going to come down to turnout. And if you look at, you've got the makeup of the Democratic electorate, a quarter of them are Gen Z. A quarter of that electorate are young people. Are they going to, and this is registered voters based on the data that I have access to through L2. I'm seeing a quarter of that group. Those are a quarter of the registered voters who are Democrats are Gen Z. So they could play a pretty big factor in this race. Are they going to turn out to vote? I don't know. They traditionally don't. And I will be surprised if they do. I'll be the first one to admit that I was wrong if they do. Because everyone, wrings their hands trying to figure out how to get the youth vote. When is the youth vote going to make an impact? This would be a race where they could really make an impact. And I don't know if they're going to. So that's another thing to watch going forward. All right, reached the halfway point so far. Usually try to do these about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. Leave your questions and comments in the chat. I will try to get to them as quickly as possible. Amber on TikTok. Sorry, I'm trying to look at your username on TikTok. Amber on TikTok, I'm guessing, says, I hope they show up and vote. Young people. Well, you get the sense that there's enough anger about what is happening that they may show up and vote. And if they do, then I think everybody's numbers change of what they need to do in order to win this race. Every campaign has a number that they need to hit. They need to hit their numbers in certain areas. And if they do, they usually win. But, if you are basing your numbers on young people not showing up to vote and they do, then that really throws things off. So, those ballots show up next week. They start mailing out, I believe, on Monday. So all the hypotheticals, we're about done with this. And I think it's going to be a very interesting election because the one issue that has really just blown up in this race is the fight over data centers and the one up in Box Elder. And that is hitting some people hard. There are a lot of people who are very nervous about the impact that issue could have on this election. I think Senate President Stuart Adams, if he could do it all over again, they would do this MITA vote and everything after the primary election. I think this is really his role in MITA, his role in fast tracking this data center up in Box Elder County, the Kevin O'Leary one. It's causing him some problems. He went on the Hugh Hewitt show last week. Terrible interview. Hugh Hewitt, I don't care for him, but he went on the Hugh Hewitt show last week to talk about the Utah economic miracle. So he's feeling the heat. Also, the other dynamic that I'm finding really interesting is House Speaker Mike Schultz, who has come out and said he supports this referendum on the data center. He is trying to distance himself from this as much as possible. Say what you want about Speaker Schultz, but he's pretty savvy politically. He can read people, and he knows that this issue is a problem. He knows it's a problem. Just look at how he's acting. He wants nothing to do with it. Proud Nani on YouTube says, older voters tend to turn out for every election because it's something we hold very dear as a precious right. Yeah, older voters are the ones who show up to vote. Nathan Detroit, he's parentheses, boomer voice. Hopefully there's not a big Fortnite event on election day or the Gen Z kids will be MIA. Do you remember a couple of years ago when they released one of the new Halo games on election day? People were wringing their hands for that, but young people, they don't traditionally show up to vote. I hope they do. I wish they would. I've never missed an election. When I turned 18, I was the first election that I voted in. First big election was the 1988 presidential. I won't tell you who I voted for, but that was the first big one that I voted for. Katie Did It says Schultz isn't facing a challenger. Yeah, he doesn't have a primary challenge. He handily won the nomination at convention. But still, Schultz is viewing this through the lens of he's going to run for governor in 2028. He's absolutely going to run for governor. He's getting ready for that. And he doesn't want to do something that's going to piss off voters. So he doesn't want to be speaker forever. He wants to be governor. And he's been positioning himself for that for a couple of years. Gabriel on YouTube says, is there something to be said in the CD1 primary that lower turnout cuts in favor of the progressive candidates, since the more engaged/extreme voters are the ones who turn out in primaries? Possibly, and I think that might be part of the reason why Nate Bluin dropped his gambit today, that he's going to conduct a poll, and if he's not the leading progressive candidate, he's going to drop out. Spoiler alert, he will be the leading progressive candidate. It's his poll that he's paying for. And it's basically an attempt to try and put pressure on the other candidates to drop out. It's too late to do it, though, because the ballots have already been printed. So even if somebody drops out of the race, they're still going to be on the ballot. So, you know, it's kind of a who cares type of thing. It was really a stunt by Bluin. Who has really been going on the attack against McAdams. I expect him to really go on the attack against McAdams tomorrow night. But lower turnout, when you get lower turnout and you have 4 candidates splitting the vote, wacky things can happen. I expect whoever wins the CD1 primary to win with less than 50% of the vote. I would be surprised. I would be supremely shocked if anybody gets over 50% in that vote. That would really, really be something. So you're going to have 4 people splitting, and if you get low turnout, I expect turnout will be a little bit higher than what people expect, but it's still, what you normally get for a primary. But if you do get low turnout, wacky things can happen. The only thing that might save McAdams in that case is that you've got 3 candidates who would be splitting the progressive vote. Bluin should have tried to do this a couple of weeks ago, when there was still time to put more pressure on the other candidates. But the only way that you can view it when he does it now is that it's a stunt. And McAdams is already up on television. He launched his first television ad. The other candidates don't have the money to do television. And I know that a lot of people think that that's gross, but money is the lifeblood of politics in this country. And if you have money, you can run the kind of campaign you want to run. And McAdams is running the kind of campaign he wants to run. And the other candidates are being forced to run the kind of campaign that they have to run because they don't have the funds. I'm a Doofus on YouTube says, I hope they can consolidate. They're not going to. Drew Chamberlain says, the glasses are very distracting. Then change the channel, Drew. I know who you are. Change the channel. I'm not gonna, these are my glasses. I can change, I could do this. Is this better for you, Drew? Is that better? Huh? You like that one? Maybe I could do this one. Here, bring on the pirate ones. I'll do this here. Nobody's forcing you to watch, Drew. Nobody's forcing you to watch. But back to I'm a Doofus. I don't know why you're using that name, but I hope they consolidate. I doubt that's going to happen. The people who will do the consolidating now are the voters. The voters are the ones who will be doing the consolidating. Steve Hardy on TikTok says, what brand of glasses are those? It's a company called Pair, P-A-I-R. And it's just little magnets on the toppers. And there's knockoffs all over Etsy. And people actually sell I don't have a 3D printer, but I've seen them selling the blueprints or the patterns for a 3D printer on Etsy and other websites. So they're not hard to get. The ones through the actual Pair eyewear are a little spendy sometimes, but you can find alternatives all over the place. I have a pair of American flag ones that I wear around elections and that I go to conventions for the political events. So yeah. Rebecca Rodriguez says CD1 is the most exciting thing in Utah politics. Wish I could vote. Yeah, this is probably, this is going to be a very exciting race. And I'm going to be very, very interested to see how this works out. I'm planning on going through the election results live with everybody on election night. So mark your calendars. We're going to be doing a live broadcast on election night to break down those results, live stream on all of your channels. Sagato Realty on Instagram says, do you think McKay and Fiafia will be a tight race? That is, I believe, the Senate District 18 race between Dan McKay and Representative Doug Fiafia. They both got a lot of money. There's a lot of money flowing into that race. It could be tight. There's a reason why Fiafia decided to get into that race. I thought that it was going to be because perhaps he had cut some sort of deal with McKay. This was my conspiratorial nature, or always expect the unexpected to happen. But I thought that there might have been some sort of deal, which happens from time to time in Utah politics, where McKay was going to drop out and try to run for Congress. He did not do that, which surprised me because McKay has been wanting to run for Congress for years. But that didn't happen. And McKay barely survived at the state convention. I think it was like 2 votes that kept him in the race. He didn't collect signatures. Fiafia did not. Tracy Halverson was also in the race. She is the woman who's been banned from Republican Party events because she filed that gigantic RICO insane lawsuit trying to kick Governor Cox and John Curtis and a number of people out of office and get them replaced with the convention winners. And then she was defeated pretty handily at convention. But Dan McKay survived the second round of voting by 2 votes. He was almost knocked out, and that would have ended his career. And part of the reason why I thought McKay was going to run is because last year he said that if his wife Tawny, who was running for Riverton mayor, if she had won the mayor race, he would not run for re-election. And when you make these pronouncements that you're not going to run again, it tells me that at least the way that I interpreted it was he was bored, he didn't want to do it anymore, or he was looking at another office. And he has wanted to run for Congress for quite a long time. So I don't know if Dan McKay hangs on. I don't know if Fiafia defeats him. It could be a very, very tight race. I'll probably have to spend some time trying to break down some of the numbers over there and looking at the electorate in that Senate district. But that is one that you should definitely watch on election night. And I'll be here live watching as the results roll in with you. Proud Nani on YouTube says, I've seen Bluin on 2 out-of-state podcasts in the last week trying to get more attention to his campaign. Yeah, he was on Hassan Piker's podcast, and I can't remember the other one. When candidates do that, for the most part, they're trying to goose their not only their public profile, but they're also trying to goose their fundraising numbers. And I would expect, especially on Hassan Piker's show, which is a wildly popular show, although he is a very divisive figure, a very polarizing figure. But his audience are very hardcore progressives. I would expect Bluin got a nice fundraising bump out of that. I don't know how much it would be, and we won't know for a while until those FEC reports are due. But that's the main reason you do that, because those people can't vote for you. You're not talking to voters in Utah. You're talking to like-minded individuals across the country who might dig into their wallets and give you some cash. That's how you should look at that, and that's what I think that Bluin was trying to do. It's also kind of a cool thing that he can say to the progressives back here in Utah. He goes, "Hey, look, Hassan Piker, who you like, had me on his show." So that's probably the bump he would get among the Utah electorate. Gabriel on YouTube says, is it just me or does Senator McKay seem rather satisfied with his little fiefdom over the Revenue and Tax Committee? If he hangs on to it, they do like to shuffle those around, mostly depending on who has curried favor with Senate President Stuart Adams, who decides those assignments, and who has upset him. Let's see. Katie Did It on YouTube says, maybe it's my imagination, but is Representative Moore moving to the center left? Proud Nani replies, Moore is nowhere near center left. He's definitely to the right, maybe center right, but definitely right. He's vice chair of the GOP. Yeah, I don't think he's going to the center to the center left, but he is staking out, a more mainstream position. His opponent in that primary, Carrie-Ann Lisenby, she appeals to the farther right elements of the Republican Party. That's what she's done throughout her entire career in the legislature. And what she's running into the problem that outside of her House district, nobody knows who the hell she is. And the fact that she was unopposed in like 3 out of her last 4 elections. The last 2 elections, she was unopposed. So she has not had a tough election. And meanwhile, Moore has been in a primary every time he's run for Congress. He was in a primary in 2020, 2022, 2024, and now 2026. He's been defeated at convention every single year, always gotten signatures, and then ended up winning. So his campaign, for want of a better term, is battle tested, and her campaign is not. And you're seeing the echo chamber on X and Twitter. They do not like Blake Moore. They like Carrie-Ann Lisenby, but the problem is the electorate is not on X or Twitter. A lot of people are not over there anymore. But that's where, she's choosing to campaign. And she's got a record too. And if you look at her record, it's not something that appeals to the to Republican primary voters, to a larger universe of Republican primary voters. That's why Moore is favored. I didn't get to talk about this last week because, as I mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of stuff blew up in my personal life. But Moore released an internal poll, or he leaked an internal poll to Politico that showed that he was crushing Carrie-Ann Lisenby. The first thing you need to understand is internal polls are the least reliable of those polls because you don't know what the other questions were. You don't know what their sample looks like. You don't know how they weighted it. And a campaign doesn't release this information unless it makes them look good. Easiest rule of thumb is always subtract at least 5 points from what the leader has in an internal poll, and then add at least 5 points to the opponent. That being said, he was crushing Lisenby. She was in the 20s. He was in the high 60s. And that's what I would expect to see. I don't think she's going to do very well in this primary. I would not expect her to do very well. I would be shocked if she came within 10 points of Blake Moore. She has staked her entire campaign on trying to stoke anger about the redistricting decision because of Moore's work with Better Boundaries in 2018. That has been somewhat effective because Moore has had to address the issue, and I would expect him to be asked about it at the debate, and she'll level a few more attacks. But I don't think it's getting the kind of traction in this race that they thought it would, and her supporters who really like the caucus and convention system. Utahns like the signature path. They do. And Utahns want independent redistricting. They don't like the way it's been going, where you have the Republicans drawing themselves safe districts. Prop 4 passed for a reason. It barely passed, but it passed. And when you have the legislature becoming more and more imperial, meaning they are amassing more power unto themselves and putting themselves above the governor, above the judiciary even, and I think that they're reading the room wrong. And I think a lot of Utahns, especially those who are independent, who make up a large portion of the state, and those independent, fair-minded Republicans, they don't like that. And so I don't know how much traction that issue is going to get, but I would be really surprised. Again, this is not a prediction. Please do not read this as a prediction, but I would be surprised if Lisenby came within 10 points of Blake Moore, simply because nobody knows who the hell she is. It's the same thing that happened to Brad Wilson when he ran for Senate in 2024. He thought that the amount of money he had, and he spent $5 million of his own money on that race to try to get the Republican nomination. He thought his money was going to scare people off, and it didn't. You saw a lot of other people get in that race. You saw John Curtis get in that race, and Wilson and his supporters did their damnedest to try and keep John Curtis out of that race, because they knew the moment he got in that race, he would have the best name ID. And that, unfortunately, name ID is what wins a lot of races, and nobody knows who Carrie Ann Lisenby is. That's, I think, the problem that Mike Schultz is going to run into if he runs for governor in 2028. Nobody really knows who the hell he is. That's why I think the front runners right now are John Curtis. If he decides to run for that, he is obviously a front runner. Jason Chaffetz is probably a front runner because he's got more name ID than anybody else would be in the race, save for John Curtis. And Deidre Henderson would also be a formidable candidate simply because of her name ID. If you were to ask voters to pick Mike Schultz out of a lineup, I would think that less than half of them could. And that's a real problem for him. Now, Schultz is wildly wealthy, but how much of his own money is he going to put into that race? I don't know. That'll be something to watch. And Rebecca Rodriguez points out that Blake Moore has $2.5 million in the bank. That's at the last report. He's going to have as much money as he needs. He really is. And Lisenby is going to have trouble raising money to keep track. That's just that's how politics work. So anyway, what are your thoughts about the things we've talked about tonight? I want to answer more of your questions. I want to hear what you have to say about that. What do you think of the how much of a factor do you think the data center issue is going to be in some of these races? I think it's absolutely a factor in the Senate District 7 race with Stuart Adams. I think it's going to be a factor in Congressional District 1. Nate Bluin is really trying to make that an issue. The financial disclosures came out. Ben McAdams has a small financial stake in a company that works with data centers, and Nate Bluin has tried to make that an issue. McAdams fired back, pointing out that Bluin basically erased the corporate donations that he took from his at his state level organizations, his state PACs. He erased those corporate donations once he jumped into the congressional race, trying to rewrite history. And if you look at what he did, that's a pretty good explanation of what he did. He also tried to use some of his state level PAC money and move it into his congressional campaign, which is a no-no. Once he realized he couldn't do that, he refunded that money, but he did try to do that. Serald says, this may raise the profile and conflict of the Box Elder data center much higher. I think so. I do think so. He's also referring to that Aaron Brockovich has launched a site that maps and covers data centers. This is an issue that I think It's one of those unexpected issues that has really exploded. And part of the problem is the way this Box Elder data center was approved, where it was fast tracked through this really shadowy, secretive Utah unelected board that's become sort of the personal fiefdom of Senate President Stuart Adams, that was initially created to give benefits or to help benefit military installations in the state, but it has expanded far beyond that initial charge. They're building luxury hotels up at Deer Valley, and then you've got it. They're just rushing through this data center that's going to be the largest data center in the world with very little public input, and I think that really rubs people the wrong way, because we see that these data centers, wherever they go in, they really hurt the quality of life in those communities, and people don't want it. And then and you can tell that they misjudged the reaction to this, because when just look at the just look at the way that they are responding to some of the criticism, claiming that they are it's Chinese government influence. I have seen some of the stupidest stuff on Facebook where they're digging through the background of the Utah group, the two young women, Elevate Utah, who have been doing a pretty good job highlighting some of the problems with this data center. And then you had Kevin O'Leary saying that they were Chinese agents. And then you have some people here in Utah, the useful idiots in Utah, digging through and trying to connect dots that aren't there. They're claiming, they're saying that the mother of one of the Elevate Utah women works for a law firm. I think it's Curtin and McConkie, and they've done work with China. So let's connect these dots. Basically, they're trying. They think you're stupid, and they're trying to make you think that there's a conspiracy there when it's not. Serald points out that Cox threw a mega tantrum when challenged. Yeah, he does not like to be challenged on this sort of thing. They have an agreement. They had an agreement from everything that I've seen. It looks like they went looking for someone to partner with this. They decided they were going to do this massive data center project, and then they went out and roped Kevin O'Leary in, or brought him in, after they had already decided that they were going to do this and he was going to be the face of this. Cox, they don't like being told no. You look at what happens with the judiciary. When the Utah Supreme Court pointed out that they had violated the Utah Constitution when they overturned Prop 4, and the legislature expanded the Supreme Court to pack the court to get 2 more justices. And then they went after Justice Diana Hagan, who has resigned. And then the Chief Justice resigned. So Spencer Cox is going to get 4 appointments to the Utah Supreme Court. And that is going to be the most drastic overhaul of the Utah Supreme Court in decades. And that's going to have a profound impact on what happens with the laws that they pass. They created this new constitutional court, which, instead of forum shopping, they created their own forum when they get challenged on the constitutionality of laws. They have fundamentally changed a lot of how government works simply because they were told no by the judiciary and they don't like it. Gabriel on YouTube says, I've been surprised to see how quickly the data center story broke containment into the national news, although I suppose I shouldn't be with Kevin involved. Kevin O'Leary's been on Fox News trying to defend it. It's a good story, and when you get significant public backlash like that, it's going to break containment. And the other thing that contributed to that is the fact that just the massive size of this data center campus. 40,000 acres is the campus. That's not going to be the buildings, but it's going to be the largest in the world if it's producing the 9 gigawatts of power that they say it's going to. There's no facility on the planet right now that comes that close. It's going to use, 2 or 3 times the amount of power that the entire state uses. And when you think about it, Times Square uses more power than I think the entire country of New Zealand. I'm not surprised that it broke containment. Elliot Nutter on TikTok says, I've seen some MAGA Facebook Utah people oppose the data center, so I think it's going to be big all over. Yeah, this is an issue that cuts across. This is one that is a unifying issue. I've been watching some of these far-right groups, a lot of these conspiratorial groups, who it's easy to make fun of them. A lot of times they don't know what they're talking about. They're used to getting their way because, they agree with lawmakers on a lot of things, but they are breaking with lawmakers on this. They're mad, not only because of the way that it was approved, basically behind closed doors without public input, but the size and the impact it's going to have. This is a unifying issue, and I think a lot of people did not expect that. And I, for one, am going to be absolutely fascinated to see how this plays out in these upcoming elections, because it is a potent issue. It's happening very close to the primary. There's not time for it to go for people to forget about it, because American voters have very short attention spans. What is a big story today is not going to be a big story a week from now. But I think this is a big enough story that there's a lot of damage control that's being done right now. There's a lot of damage control. Anne Celeste on TikTok asks about Lux Hotels. Yes, MIDA, which they can override a lot of local authority and approve some projects. They are partnering with a New York developer to build the Grand Hyatt at Deer Valley and the village there. They also have some high-end condos, and that's one of the projects that they approved. It's they help pay, or they help provide a lot of the funding for the infrastructure that is done through bonds. These are not bonds that go to taxpayers, though. These are bonds that are paid back through tourism tax and by the property owners there. But they do give tax breaks. They do give incentives, and so they are. So that is one of the projects that they've done. And Celeste says, how is that related to the military? Here's how they related to the military. It has to give some benefit to the military. From what I understand, it's the fact that military members and veterans can get a discount when they stay at the Grand Hyatt at Deer Valley. That's the benefit that is provided to the military. That's the justification that they've used to do this project. And if you look at the money that MIDA has put towards this, I think they paid the developer, Excel Corporation, it was like $51 million last year to help with the construction. They also have a revolving loan fund with the state. There were some luxury condos that were built there, and MIDA bought one of the buildings that had 42 luxury condo units, 42 of them for $15 million. They paid $5 million cash, and then took out a $10 million loan from the state that is going to be paid back like $1 million a year over 10 years. And it's going to be paid. And what they're using it for is for low income, for moderate income housing for workers. Military members can use it for housing. So basically the state is also, MIDA is now a landlord as well, because they bought this luxury condo building, and they're using it to house workers there who can't find accommodations elsewhere in Park City, the people who work at Deer Valley up in Summit County. So, Proud Nani says, why hasn't there been much attention put on the proposed data centers down south? That's a good question. They're not as big. Although if you saw what Iron County did, they voted to put a moratorium on data centers, but they also tacked on any other energy projects. So they're not going to be doing any new solar or any other energy projects down there, just to take it off the table. a lot of these decisions, people I think are hoping will last past the election. Stuart Adams, the main obstacle to him getting another term in office is this primary. And he's going to do whatever he can to try and defuse this issue until we get past the primary. He's got a 3-way primary. There's 2 other Republicans. And you've seen, so I think that is a real live issue in his race, and he's hoping to get past that. Let's see. Any other questions or comments out there? I want to hear from you. What races are you watching? Remember, as I said, ballots start hitting mailboxes next week. You should start seeing them next Tuesday. They'll go out on Monday. And then we are in it. So tomorrow night's debate, we start the debates tomorrow, the televised debate, the one and only televised debate. That is, the first one is between the 4 candidates running for the Democratic nomination in Congressional District 1. Started off the show telling you why that debate is probably going to suck. And it's not because of the candidates, it's because of the format. It's under the Utah Debate Commission is under new management. A couple of years ago, the original Utah Debate Commission, which was a partnership with the media and media organizations, and they had a Democrat and a Republican on their board, and they tried to create these televised debates. Good idea, terrible execution. They would get some funding every year from the legislature to put these things on. And then a couple of years ago, the legislature, the Republican-controlled legislature, decided that they were going to take it over. And initially, they wanted to give $600,000 to Utah Valley University and the Herbert Center down there to administer these debates. But somehow, the University of Utah got involved, and the Hinckley Institute. And so now the Hinckley Institute is like the main sponsor, even though the idea of bringing it in-house was through the Herbert Institute down at Utah Valley University. So there's new management. I fundamentally do not think that the state should be putting on televised political debates, because there is always the possibility of undue influence from these from lawmakers. And as we've seen in the last few years, the legislature has not been very reluctant to insert themselves into issues involving other state agencies. And so when you've got the legislature funding these debates, now directly funding these debates through the University of Utah and Utah Valley University, you don't think that they're going to be a little bit cautious about how they approach these debates in terms of the questions that they ask? All of this started back in 2022 when the Utah Debate Commission was going to put on primary debates for U.S. Senate. With that was the race where Mike Lee was running for re-election, and he was challenged by Becky Edwards and Ali Isom, and there were some other candidates running in the other congressional debates. And the Debate Commission was going to put on these debates, and the Utah Republican Party and Chairman Carson Jorgensen objected to that, because they said these primary debates are essentially party functions. The party, it's not a general election; it's a party operation, and they felt that they should be allowed to pick the moderator, have some say in the moderators, and have some say in the questions that are being asked. For their part, the Debate Commission said, no, we're independent, we're putting these on. And so the Republican Party put on their own debates. If you remember, they had a U.S. Senate debate that was moderated by Carson Jorgensen, and it was sponsored by the Utah GOP, and the party chairman was the person who moderated and picked all the questions. That entire that whole entire thing was designed to protect Mike Lee. That's all it was. They were trying to protect Lee from being attacked by Ali Isom and Becky Edwards. Lee ended up running away with that primary election, but they did that to protect him. Last year, when the party did not put on their own debates, did not put on separate debates, they worked with the debate commission, and the debate commission let them help decide the moderators and the questions which should offend you if you believe that these debates are supposed to inform the public, and you've got the party helping to dictate or helping to decide who's going to moderate it and what sort of questions are being asked. And then they're just taking all the mystery out of it, getting rid of the middleman, and now the state, the Republican-controlled legislature, gave it over to the University of Utah, which gives it sort of the sheen or veneer of, being a legitimate journalistic endeavor when it's not. It's not. These are state-sponsored debates. The state should not be paying for these sort of things, or the state should not be involved in this way. That is just my opinion. If you want to serve the public, then it's wildly improper for the state to be involved in that. I'm a Doofus says, are you covering that debate live tomorrow? Yes, I'm going to be there. It's going to be a chance to ask questions. I'm going to be at all three debates. I've got some doozies locked and loaded for some of the candidates because what happens is we have the debate, which is going to be bleh, and then afterwards each of the candidate comes back out on stage. This is just on the live stream, but each of the candidates come back out on stage and they have a media scrum for about 10 minutes, which is probably the most useful part of it because you can press them on some questions, and there's some things that I think these candidates need to be asked that they really haven't been asked about. So I've got some interesting questions locked and loaded for that. So I'm looking forward to that. So I will be there. Proud Nani says we're keeping it front and center up in Davis County. I think she's talking about the data center issue and MIDA. And it is a potent issue with Stuart Adams in his reelection bid. I don't think he thought it was going to be this difficult as when he filed for reelection. And it's essentially whoever wins that has an extremely good chance of winning the election in November, meaning if Stuart Adams wins that primary race, it's more likely than not that he's going to have another term in office. And it's a 4-year term in the U.S. Senate, in the state Senate. So let's see. Random Quokka says, any state school board races sticking out to you? I really haven't dug into those as much as I should. I will spend some time this week looking into it, but I really don't have much of an informed opinion right now on the state school board races. The only thing that I've really known is that Michael Clara dropped out of the race, and I reported on that a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that on a previous podcast. So. Well, I've been talking for more than an hour, almost an hour and 15 minutes, and my voice is starting to go. So I'm probably going to get close to wrapping this up here. I do have to tell you, though, that if you have a chance, go to my website. I have a podcast interview that I published today with Liban Mohammed, who is a Democrat running in 1st Congressional District. I have interviews with the other candidates. I'll be doing the last one tomorrow, and I'll be releasing all of those interviews as podcasts. And you can find those on my website, or you can go to wherever you get your podcasts. The show is called Special Session with Brian Schott, and you can get those podcasts. They're also video podcasts on YouTube. So spend some time, probably about half an hour, talking with Mohammed, spent some time talking with Ben McAdams, interviewed Nate Bluen earlier today, and I'll be speaking with Michael Farrell tomorrow, and I'll be publishing those for your consumption, which is part of my work as an independent journalist here in Utah, and hopefully get some perspectives and some insight on those races, or at least understand where those candidates are. Spent a lot of time talking with Nate Bluen about the data center issue and about his vow to sponsor a poll and drop out if he's not the leading progressive candidate. Spoiler alert, he's going to be the leading progressive candidate, and in my view, this is a stunt to try and put some pressure on Liban Mohammed and Michael Farrell to drop out, but it's too late for them to drop out because the ballots have already been printed. So anyway, Elliot Nutter says, I wish there was a section of debates where there were a few live audience questions. I think there are certain states that do it right with their debates. I think in Colorado with Kyle Clark, I'm sure you've seen him on social media. He does a tremendous job with the debates. I think that the Texas debates, although they've in their heyday, the Texas debates I thought were tremendous because it wasn't one debate, it was a series of debates. And instead of one moderator, you had three moderators. And those moderators were journalists and they would just fire questions at the candidates. And it wasn't one question that would cover all of the candidates. It was a question for a candidate and then everyone else got to chime in. And I thought I think that format is much more helpful than one moderator asking a fairly generic question. Back in 2022, when they were doing the one televised debate between Mike Lee and Evan McMullin, the one where Lee's people got access to the tickets early and packed the house in his favor, the debate commission reached out to me and said, do you want to ask a question? And I told them the question that I wanted to ask, and it was a very pointed question towards Senator Lee about his involvement in January 6th. And they said, you cannot ask that question because it does not also pertain. It's not a question that would also give an opportunity for Evan McMullin to answer. And I said, that's the question that I want to ask. So if I can't ask that question, I'm going to pass because how do you ask a question about January 6th that is pointed and trying to get at what is, we still don't know what Senator Lee's involvement was, the full extent of his involvement in that attack on the Capitol. We still don't know that. He's never fully answered questions about that. How do you ask a question that you can try to get to that, but also making it so that it's generic enough that Evan McMullin can answer, because you have to water it down. And I didn't want to do that. So that's why I decided not to participate in the debate like that, because I just didn't think that was the way. I just didn't think it was going to do anybody any good. Speaking of Mike Lee, did you see his post? I'm going to try to pull this up from the other day where he was trying to finger wag at Democrats who compare or people who compare Donald Trump to Hitler, the Hitler comparisons that happen online. And he was trying to finger wag and tone police, saying this is what foments violence and causes people to go toward political violence. I'm scrolling through his Twitter feed right now, but trying to find this exactly. But he was finger wagging at people who compared Trump to Hitler, saying that sort of red rhetoric leads to assassination attempts. Just remember, he still has not apologized for making jokes about the Hortmans, the Minnesota Democratic lawmaker and her husband who were murdered by a Trump supporter. So he can miss me with this tone police. I don't ever want to hear him tone police again. He does it to stoke outrage, obviously. He knows exactly what he's doing because he thinks that you're stupid or his supporters are stupid. That's what a lot of his Twitter account is. But he still hasn't apologized for that about the Hortmans. So until he does that, he can miss me with that tone police. He really can. I can't take anything he says seriously about that. So didn't have time to find the, here it is what he said. When you compare Trump to Hitler, you encourage assassination attempts. Stop it. There's zero legal or moral justification for violence against him. I invite all Democrats to echo this message. Okay, I think we can agree that there is, politically motivated violence is bad. But until you apologize for the jokes you posted about two people who were actually murdered in Minnesota, you can shut the hell up, because that just doesn't, you just need to shut up until that happens. Because I will not have my finger wagged at by him until he apologizes for his own bad behavior, which he's not going to. He's not going to do that. And that's the reason why. So Anyway, that's probably going to do it for me for tonight. I've enjoyed our time together, enjoyed talking about it. I'm going to write something, have it out tomorrow, just what to watch for in the debates, and explaining more about why the debates are going to suck. And it's the format. It's 100% the format. Just does not do anybody any good. But I'll be there because it's a journalistic opportunity to ask some questions afterwards. So I'll have that for you. I'll publish some video from that as well. If you want to support what I do, I'm an independent journalist. My website, utahpolitics.news, it is journalist owned, journalist operated, reader supported. I do not have corporate backers. There are no corporations who give me money to do this. I do not have a billionaire backer. No billionaire is telling me what I can and cannot cover. And I like it that way. I don't have to worry about pissing off advertisers by what I say or what I might write. I don't have to worry about that. I have the freedom to write about the things that I think are important and explain them to you, and explain why I think that they're important. And hopefully you get a little bit smarter when you do that too. And if that kind of thing is valuable to you, you can go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. It's free, utahpolitics.news. You'll get most of my journalism in your inbox. But if you want to help me do what I do, investigations and whatnot, you can become a paid subscriber. It's $55 a year, $5 a month. You get some extra stuff when you do that. And you get some subscriber-only things. Or you can throw a couple bucks in the tip jar. All of that helps. All of that helps out. It allows me to do what I'm doing. This thing that I have here, it's growing, and it's growing because of you. It's not growing because of me. It's growing because of you, because you value what I do. And I'm so grateful that I get to keep doing this. And I only get to keep doing this because of your support. And maybe, just maybe, you found yourself with some extra money in your pocket because there's a subscription, a local subscription you don't have to pay for anymore. You know what? That's great. I think that it's fantastic that, people can offer their journalism for free. And I try to offer most of my journalism for free, but I still need, money makes the world go round is the trite way to put it. And readers are the ones who make this website and make all this stuff possible. So if you value that, please consider going to my website, utahpolitics.news, sign up for my newsletter, become a paid subscriber. I will thank you profusely. And again, I am so grateful that there are people out there who value this, who want to hear what I have to say, who like the way that I cover politics. I'm so grateful that happens, and it means the world to me. People send me emails all the time. They'll just drop a quick email and say, "Hey, thanks for what you're doing. I really appreciate it." And it takes them 5 seconds, but that sort of feedback means the world to me. It's just so nice to know that what I'm doing is valued by people. But we could always use more of you. We could always use more of you. So you can go to my website, utahpolitics.news. Love to hear from you there. And watch for my debate coverage. That's tomorrow night on. It's going to be on the TV looky box tomorrow night, and I will be there in the audience. And I'll have some video for you afterwards. And give you my thoughts on what happened. Hopefully it's entertaining. Hopefully it's valuable and gives you some information. I don't have high hopes for it simply because the format is the format and it's so restrictive. But anyway, that's probably enough of me complaining about that. Appreciate all your eyeballs and your attention tonight. Hope everybody has a great evening. We will talk to you again soon. If you have any questions, any comments, you want to reach out to me, my email's on the screen. You can hit me up with a DM on any of these social channels that are flashing down in the corner over here. I'm not good at that. You'll see them right there. Yeah, there they are. You can hit me up there, and I'll get back to you. I really appreciate it. News, tips, all that stuff. But until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you, and we will talk to you again real soon.